Good morning, welcome back. Tricks at the Foxerie, clinical psychologist, explaining the mysteries of social confidence. We're continuing on with our exploration of basic ego dynamics. I say basic, but I'm actually covering a very wide territory here with some pretty advanced concepts. However, we need to push on and plow through them because there's a lot to learn before we get to the juicy stuff. We need to really have a good working model of our own ego, and it will help us figure out why we behave the way we behave. And in terms of social confidence, you need to know where you're giving your power away, meaning where the ego begins to come unstuck and then feels less confident. So we'll start with the ubiquitous diagram. Now, in the last couple of videos, I introduced the idea. Here's the now famous circle. Freud called this thing in our unconscious the it. He just said it was the it. He didn't even know what it was. It, like this. But Carl Jung, his should we say protege or colleague? Let's go colleague. They're kind of on equal footing, really. Carl Jung disagreed. He was like, no, it's not it. There's something more going on. There's something structured in the unconscious. It's not just it. Carl Jung called it the great self. And he viewed it as an entirely separate personality, like having a completely separate entity inside you. So if we were to say, draw you, let's just give you a little bit of a potato body here. There's your legs, obviously, clearly hyper-realistic as usual. And there you are. Carl Jung said, inside you is the great self. Like this. And some people have called this the God self, the over self, the higher self, and so on. And this self within you is fizzing with energy. And the great self wants great things from you. That's why it's called the great self. It wants incredible things, and it is not happy when you fall short of giving it the great things it wants. So we have an internal pressure. It wants you to do things. This is a really, really difficult point for a lot of people to accept. They somehow think the great self is a part of them, or it's an aspect of them. This is completely wrong. This is a separate person, if you like, inside of you, a whole separate thing, psychologically speaking. It looks out your eyes, shares the eyes. It hears things with your ears, like this. It smells things with your nose. It tastes things with your mouth. It feels things with your skin or your fingers. It shares all these nervous pathways with you, but it isn't you. That's the key understanding. All right, let's just get rid of the little hyper-realistic model there. Okay, come back to this. So in the earlier videos, I'd been calling this the it, because that's what Freud called it. It was just it. And we'll keep the energy. It is full of energy, like this. And it is a struggle for the ego to somehow push away and separate. This is you trying to separate itself from these powerful forces in the unconscious to become, what should we call it, a whole person. There's a nice way of putting it, or an individual in your own right, or just a person if you prefer simplifying. This is the struggle for the ego. This is the battle you face every day. Not only are you trying to keep structured in yourself, meaning maintain yourself, you're always trying to individuate and push away from the great self too, because if you can't, then you won't feel like a whole person, but also you'll be subject to control by the great self. It wants to possess you, wants to take over and control you. Let's give a real world example of this, because it might seem a bit surreal. You might be thinking, I don't feel there's a pressure inside me to take over. Well, let's challenge that. Let's use a very simple example. This doesn't happen to everyone, but it happens to enough people that it's relatable. Here's the scary dog example. Whoops, I want to just change that to black. Okay, so you're walking home from school, young child, there's scary dog. And the neighbor's scary dog starts attacking or coming towards you like that. There's the body, there's the legs clearly. Shouldn't even have to explain it, it's so realistically rendered. And it's growling at you like this. Okay. The ego, the young child who feels anxious about this situation, can relate to this experience. Something inside you, in the face of this threat, starts to stir a feeling, anxiety if you like, whatever it is. It rises up inside and it starts to enter your awareness. I'm afraid. Just poking out here like this. We'll call this energy. It starts to feel in the body. I'm afraid, I'm nervous. And then suddenly, when this dog starts coming at you, attacking, full ferocity, this energy here inside takes over completely. You are overcome with anger or terror or something. You're not yourself for a few moments and you run away, or you go this way and you fight. Have you ever got so angry you just lost control? Have you ever been so hungry you lost control? Have you ever been so upset that you lost control? This is describing in psychological terms what happens when your ego defenses are a little bit weakened, a little bit down. The great self moves in and takes over you. Then later, when you calm down, or when you eat, or when you run away, or whatever it is you did, this all calms down and goes back to normal. You feel like yourself again. Have you ever had or ever heard the expression, I wasn't myself? I apologize for yelling at you, I just wasn't myself. This is explaining the dynamic as it occurs in real life. Okay, so I think you get that concept. Let's just clear the decks here a little bit. Go to another clean slate. So if Carl Jung was right, I want to use the black color again. If Carl Jung was right, and this thing in our unconscious is not just the it, as Freud called it, it's the great self. In the last video, I suggested that the great self has different sort of aspects, you could say, elements if you prefer, facets even. It has things like, we'll say sex, needs for aggression. There's lots of ways to make this diagrammatic. Needs for power, needs for bonding, all sorts of different ones, bonding and so on. The great self has many facets. Now, imagine if in your family, as you were growing up, a particular facet was not very well supported. Let's say sex. Some families are very puritanical or very repressed or very whatever about sex. So as anything to do with sex starts to well up into the personal psyche or your personal conscious, the ego here, this is you, then if it's not very well supported in the family, here's your parent figure going, oh no, not sex. No. The rules. It's the superego. Then sex, as it tries to sort of, express itself through you, doesn't get through to the conscious part of the ego. It just stays trapped here in the unconscious part of the ego. Okay, so that's what we called in the earlier video a split. Here, up here, I'm pure. I don't have sex. I don't think about sex. But down here in the unconscious, it's all sex, sex, sex. Okay, so there's your split. Now, this split we've talked about before is one of many splits. However, if you get a lot of splits or a lot of splitting, meaning a lot of things repressed down here in your personal unconscious, not just sex maybe, but lots of different ones, this builds up a pressure. It's like an upward pressure of all that it energy trying to get through, trying to take over this special space here where you exist. And if it can't do that, it starts to irritate you or make you aggressive or make you feel uncomfortable if the pressure builds up. So the ego has a little trick it uses to relieve the pressure, and it's called projection. You may have heard this word, projection. And what it means is, we'll say magically, I don't know what the right word is, but it projects this stuff here in the unconscious out externally, and it sees it in the external world. So for instance, maybe someone the ego knows in this example is very sexual, very sort of open with sex, and seems to embody all the qualities this ego can't do. And of course, because this ego judges it, this person here is judged harshly. Oh no, they're impure, immoral, all that sort of thing. And this allows the ego to attack or relate to even the things in its own unconscious externally. So what might it do if it has a friend who's a bit like this? Here's the friend who's really into sex. It might ignore or condemn, criticize. That's condemn, not condom. Criticize. Whoops, spelling's going a bit off the boil here, etc. And now it has a way to very slightly relieve the sex pressure by, say, attacking it outside in the world. Another little trick of projection is to create, we'll call them surrogates, if you like, for sex, particularly in this example. What might it do? It might go to a bar. This is a bar. Have a drink. There's a beer glass on the bar there. This is like a substitute for sex. Or it might go to the movies. There's a movie screen there, and it might watch movies where other people are sort of, being romantic. Let's keep this rated child-friendly. Romance movies. Or what else might it do? Books on, romantic novel and so on. So it tries desperately through projection to somehow relieve the pressure. It's projecting out there. It's projecting out there and there. You get the picture. So it starts to try and relieve the pressure by projecting the things that it represses out into the world and relating to it out there. Now, it doesn't always work. After a while of this enormous pressure, let's keep it with sex for this example, building up, it might find itself suddenly, when it's a bit tired or a little bit hungry, surprising itself by making sexually inappropriate comments to friends that came out of nowhere, or behaving in a way that's a bit sexual suddenly, or even in the dreams when it goes to sleep, it might be filled with highly sexualized dreams and so on. Okay, that's just your introduction to projection. We're going to explore projection in greater depth. Let's rub this out. Oops, failing badly with my tools here. Projection is going to be something we talk about quite a lot in terms of social confidence, because where we're heading with all of this is, if you're not socially confident, it's likely you're projecting something out onto the world that's weakening you or making you feel anxious. And we need to figure out, possibly, is there something inside you that's not being able to be expressed very well, leading to an over projection of it in culture. All right, that's enough for now. Thanks for watching. Please feel free to like and subscribe, and as usual, your comments are very welcome. Bye for now.